recognize the member for Nevis too.
Good morning, Madam President. Good morning to the members of the House, those on the government side, those in opposition. I rise just to make a brief statement on the issue of geothermal development, energy development here on the island of Nevis. Madam President, yesterday in the National Assembly, my colleagues and I who are there present were able to make a contribution to a resolution passed in the National Assembly yesterday, and I should say it was unanimously supported by all who were present. And that resolution sought to signify in a very real way to the people of the Federation, the region, and the wider world that St. Kitts and Nevis, Bastia and Charlestown are equally committed to the exploration and development of the geothermal resource on Nevis. And the intention, Madam President, is for us to work together to harness this resource for the benefit of all the people of the Federation. We have heard over the years a lot of talk about geothermal. We have had efforts made by successive governments in this regard, but the reality is that it has been some 20 years since this journey started, and today we still do not have geothermal energy in our homes. As a consequence, we view what happened yesterday as a watershed event. No longer will there be different and discordant notes being sounded, information of different kind being disseminated, but for the first time, Bastia and Charlestown will be on the same page in relation to this. Why is that relevant, Madam President? It is relevant because, as we all know, Nevis does not have standing in the international community on its own. And oftentimes when we engage with international agencies or with third-party governments, they want to know what the position of the federal government is in relation to these matters. We have had, for example, some $17 million approved by the Caribbean Development Bank. And that was not possible except for the intervention of the Prime Minister, Dr. Terence Drew, on St. Kitts, who needed to write to the Development Bank to say that the federal government supports this project in order for the Development Bank to take it forward. So I just want the people of Nevis to understand and appreciate that approaching this as a joint venture, a venture that is intended to benefit all of the people of the Federation, is the pathway to realize this potential of geothermal for the benefit certainly of the people here on the island of Nevis, where the resource is located, but also to provide cheaper, cleaner energy to our brothers and sisters on St. Kitts as well. I feel that yesterday was significant, and I wanted to report to this Honorable House, coming as it is, the sitting coming as it is, just the day after, that I felt we did something truly historical and truly important yesterday in the National Parliament in St. Kitts. I was particularly pleased that my colleagues there, the Honourable Member who's here from St. George and the Honourable Member who's not here from Nevis 11, that we were all able, to lend our voices in support and to record our support of what will now be a national effort in relation to a national resource and making that national resource available to all of the people of the Federation. If we can achieve this, Madam President, it means that the people of Nevis get cheap, clean energy. If we can achieve this, it means the people of St. Kitts now get clean, cheap energy. If we can achieve this, it means that the entire Federation weans itself off fossil fuels. It means that the entire Federation insulates itself from the exogenous shocks that we are constantly seeing of wars and rumors of wars, of OPEC and organizations such as those that control the world petroleum industry, of the increasing costs of fuel. Fuel, as we know, Madam President, powers the world. It powers economies. And whenever the cost of fuel escalates, it means that our people are forced to pay more. We pay more for transportation. We pay more in terms of food prices. We pay more to cool and heat our homes. We pay more for electricity. We pay more. It is perhaps the biggest factor that impacts in a significant way the cost of living. Most of us, when we assess what our household expenditures are like, electricity is perhaps one of the higher items, probably maybe just a little under food or maybe close to food in terms of what we spend. And so the ability for us to deliver clean, cheap energy to our people is absolutely critical. And with that clean, cheap energy, it means, Madam President, we can do other things. For example, desalination to solve water problems becomes an option. We are surrounded by ocean. Currently, it is not a viable option because of the cost of electricity. The ability to have more water means that all of our farmers can now access water. We have water in abundance. It means we can now attract new industry. Energy-intensive industries can now come to us. We're talking about even new steps such as hydrogen, ammonia. These are all now within reach because of the vast deposits of energy that we have here on the island of Nevis. And so I definitely want to say to this House that I think that yesterday was a watershed event, that we took a quantum leap forward in terms of our approach as a nation to national assets and national development. And that, Madam President, when we look at nations across the globe, we look at Saudi Arabia, we look at the United Arab Emirates, everybody wants to go to Dubai. We look at Norway. We look at so many of these countries that have developed, and we can see that they've developed in large part because they have energy. That has been the driving force. Saudis have oil, Norway has oil, UAE, particularly in Abu Dhabi, they have oil. And so we can see what energy independence has done for those countries. And I believe that we are now one step closer to achieving that same objective for us. Imagine a world, Madam President, where we are no longer concerned about what's happening in the rest of the world in terms of oil prices. Imagine a world where wars and rumors of wars outside our borders do not impact the cost of bus fare here in Nevis anymore. Imagine a world where we can say to everybody in the country that you can now have electricity at affordable costs, that it is no longer crippling for the people. And even though as a government we have removed the fuel surcharge from domestic users, I want our people to understand that it comes at a cost, because the government has been forced to find money to subsidize. You would recall, Madam President, that we responded to the cries of our people about the escalating cost of electricity by removing the surcharge from domestic users. But that doesn't mean that it's free. Still means that it has to be paid for. And every month, NEVLEC, a state-owned entity, has to find anywhere from $3 to $4 million to pay Delta for diesel alone. There's nothing to do with operating costs, nothing to do with salaries, just for diesel, every single month. Imagine a world where those payments are no longer necessary, where we no longer have to worry about fossil fuels. Imagine a world where all of the vehicles parked outside are now electric vehicles, electric scooters, where the lights here and the AC that we are now enjoying is all powered by geothermal energy, by renewable energy, by clean energy that does no damage to the environment. That is the world that we are seeking to achieve. And I want to publicly commend the federal government for this initiative. It is as a result of discussions and negotiations between myself, representing the Nevis Island Administration, and the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Drew, representing the federal government. And I believe that the discordant notes that were being hitherto sent to the international community have now been put to rest, and that the international community now recognizes that we are ad idem, we are of the same mind in relation to moving this particular project forward for the benefit of all the people of the country. I want to commend, while I'm on my feet, the relationship between Nevis and Skellig, that our technicians are working very closely together. And I believe, Madam President, that I can say that the only thing that has changed is the attitude. And it just speaks to having the right approach and the right attitude and engaging with each other on the basis of mutual respect. A lot can be achieved. Because we have known that geothermal is existing, and we have known that geothermal is the answer. We have known that for a long time. But we had some unseen kids who kept trying to, how should I say, slow the process or stall the process, to the point where there were even some declaring that St. will pursue their own geothermal, knowing full well that St. does not have any geothermal deposits. And so now with a change of attitude, that's all. A new person in Bastille as the Prime Minister, a change in attitude, and here we are, being able yesterday, for the first time in the history of this 20-year odyssey, to have a resolution passed in the National Assembly saying that we, St. Kitts and Nevis, jointly support this important national development for the benefit of our entire country. I believe that that is worthy of commendation, and I wanted to report on that because I think, Madam President, that that is, as I've said, a watershed moment in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis and the relations between these two islands, one country. Thank you very much, Madam President.